Buddy. Hey Whitney, how you doing? It's good to see you. It's good to see everybody this morning and just grateful to God for being here. As Pastor Bland has said, another day that wasn't promised to me. And the church where I came from, they used to sing a song, it's just another day that the Lord has kept me. And I want you to know I just believe that in my heart because I know that I didn't keep myself. And so old deacon said, touch me with a finger of love and woke me up this morning and started me on my way. And I want you to know this morning that I'm grateful. I know that without him, I can do nothing. I know that it is in him that I move, live, and have my being. And so I thank God for my very breath this morning. Thank God for my family on this morning. And thank God for you, my MCF family this morning. If you have your Bibles, turn with me, please, to 1 Samuel, the 16th chapter. We're just moving right along in the United Kingdom stage, moving right along in the United Kingdom stage, and that is not the right slide. Can you put that on June the 3rd on the desktop? Can you do that for me, please? That's not the right one. I appreciate that. We're moving right along, and as we were ending up last Sunday, we talked about how Saul was disobedient. Do you know there's a blessing in being obedient? There is a blessing in being obedient. And Robert and I was just talking about the consequences of disobedience. There's some consequences that come with both of them. There's some consequences that come with being obedient, and there's some consequences that come with being disobedient. Now, you may not like the one that comes with being disobedient. It's a consequence nonetheless. That's a price you have to pay for the action that you committed. It's a price you have to pay for going on and doing what you wanted to do. And so you have to come to the realization that something's going to happen one way or the other. It's just, what are you willing to accept? What is it that you're willing to accept? And so Saul had been disobedient. Saul had been disobedient, and because of his disobedience, Samuel said, the kingdom is going to be rent from you. Going to be taken from you. Going to be taken from you. And so now who can tell me some things about King Saul? Let's talk about his personality. What have we learned already about King Saul? Okay, that's just a common way to put it. All right, okay. Selfish. Robert said low down. What else? Selfish, self-seeking. He didn't want to accept the consequences. Saul had a way of making excuses about his behavior. And did we find out that he was jealous? How many of you are jealous? You try not to be. It's something you have to really work on, isn't it? It's something you have to really work on. And what we've come to find out is jealousy. You're jealous in regards to something that you own, something that's yours. It's possessive. And so if you own something, then you're jealous of it, which is why God said he was a jealous God, which is why he said he was jealous of Israel, because I'm your God, you're my people. You're nothing without me. I can be jealous if I want to. But now jealousy, this type of jealousy that Saul had was a debilitating, crippling, paralyzing type of jealousy. And it was a jealousy because he did not want to see anybody else do any better than he did. Don't you know people like that? We call them haters. Exactly. And then if anybody acted like they showed any more attention to anybody else, he couldn't take that. Well, now that's something we just have to get used to, because, you know, there are going to be people, Whitney, that's going to get more attention than you get for whatever reason.
And also, he was the type who wanted to get all the credit and not give God.
Exactly. And then he didn't want to give the credit what was really due. It was really due when someone else did something that they could have been getting the credit for. He didn't want to do that. And we saw that with his son Jonathan, didn't we? And so Samuel had to tell him with a heavy heart, you're not going to be the king anymore. This kingdom is not going to go any further with you. Now he continued serving in the position of king. He continued serving. But God was somewhere preparing another king, a man after his own heart. And so Samuel was lamenting over him. Samuel was sad. And Samuel, you all told me last Sunday that because Samuel expected more out of him. Samuel said, now, if you've been placed in a position, somewhere along the line, you need to act like a king. Somewhere along the line, you need to do what kings do. And if I'm going to be your mentor, Samuel being a godly man, now, if I'm going to be the one when people look at you and say, well, now, Samuel's the one that taught him everything that he knows. What does that say about me? And so Samuel was grieving in his spirit. And in chapter 16, verse 1, the Bible says, and the Lord said unto Samuel, how long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill thine horn with oil and go. I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. And so, as we said, as we were ending, if Saul was the people's king, because certainly he was the people's king, because the people had cried out and they told Samuel, you're old and your sons they're not worthy to follow in your footsteps. And so now you need to give us a king. You need to give us a king, someone that can judge over us. You need to give us a king like the nations around us. And so if he was the people's king, then David was surely God's king. It was unquestionable that he was God's king. And so Samuel said, how can I go? Because God said, go on, I got somebody waiting on you. How can I go? If Saul hear it, he'll kill me. Samuel knew that if Saul knew that God had another king somewhere waiting to take his place, that it was going to be trouble. And so God gave him just what to do and how to do it. He says, now this is what I want you to do. I want you to go. I want you to get a heifer and come to go and make a sacrifice. And in verse 3, he says, and call Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show thee what thou shalt do, and thou shalt anoint unto me him whom I name unto thee. And so Samuel did just what he said. He invited a select group of people to the fellowship that he had, including Jesse and his sons. And, you know, Jesse must have felt very, very, very privileged to have been invited, because it wasn't for everybody. And so he must have felt very privileged. But listen, look how insignificant it seemed that David was at that time, because Jesse brought everybody except David. Have you ever felt left out? Is that a good feeling? It's not a good feeling. Well, now, if you don't know you're being left out, it's all right. Sometimes, you know, I'm oblivious to some of the things that's going on around me. I really don't know. And so I don't feel one way or another about it. I'm just indifferent about it. But if you know that everyone else been called to the dinner table and you haven't, if you know everyone else is being included, but you're left outside, that's not a good feeling. Because what we have come to find out, Sister Carol, is that everybody likes to be accepted. Everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to be accepted. And so Jesse didn't even call him in from feeding the flock. It says here, let's look at verse 4. And Samuel did that which the Lord spake, and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming, and said, Cometh thou peaceably? Why do you think they trembled so at his coming, at Samuel's coming? What do you think? And why? Okay, and then what had just happened? What had just happened to cause them to be afraid of Samuel? Well, if you had taken somebody out and butchered them up into little bitty pieces, isn't that what he did to King Agag? Isn't that what he did? I would probably be scared of you too. I probably would. And so he said, Peaceably I come to sacrifice unto the Lord. Now sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and called them to the sacrifice. And it came to pass when they were come that he looked on Eliab and said, Surely the Lord's anointed is before me. Now, why do you think he would say that? Why do you think he would say that? Why do you think he looked at Eliab and said, Surely the Lord's anointed is before me? Anybody? Well, because you know this story. You know this story, and you know kind of Samuel's behavior, his pattern. His pattern was to look at how good somebody looked. His pattern was to look at their physical appearance. That was his pattern. That's what he did with Saul. That's what he did with Saul. And so he's looking at him and said, Now surely this is him. He said, because, I'm looking at his stature, and I'm looking at his physique, and I'm looking at how handsome he is. But the Lord had to set him straight. In verse 7, it says, But the Lord said unto Samuel, Look not on his countenance, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. The Lord looketh on the heart. And I'm so afraid that we are so guilty of that. We're guilty of that. I was looking at a little, the Beauty and the Beast. That's the premise of that, is that the prince rejected someone because of how they looked, and then come to find out she really wasn't who he thought she was. And the story says, and you don't look at somebody at first glance. Because a lot of times we'll take a first glance at somebody and just read them up and down. And just, reading them all wrong. Reading them all wrong. Has anyone ever done you like that? Has anyone ever said to you, well, you're not like they said you were? Well, I thought you were all stuck up. But you're really not stuck up at all. And so people will take you at what they see, and then get all misconstrued, just all the information all wrong, based just upon what they see. What you see is not what's on the inside, It's just not what's on the inside. And so then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, Neither hath the Lord chosen this. Then Jesse made Shammah to pass by, and he said, Neither hath the Lord chosen this. Again, Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel, and Samuel said unto Jesse, The Lord hath not chosen these. And Samuel said unto Jesse, Are here all of thy children? And he said, there remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. Again, so insignificant. He's just a shepherd boy. He's out there in the sheepfold. There's nothing that you would want with him. There's nothing that you could do with him. And, Jesse doesn't know what it is that Samuel's looking for him for. Jesse's not privy to that. He's not privy to that. So, since he wasn't privy to that, and Samuel said, bring your family, well, David's part of the family, bring everybody. You get a substitute shepherd while the sacrifice is going on, while the fellowship is going on. Put somebody else out there. But Jesse didn't do that. Jesse didn't do that. We can talk a good talk, but it's hard to walk the walk. It's hard to walk the walk. And so it is something to be said for walking by faith. What does it mean when you hear walk by faith? What does that mean to you when you're walking by faith? What does that mean to you? And that's a question. It's not rhetorical. I'm asking that question. What does it mean to you when you hear? Okay. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Pastor, I would like the mic, so.
Keep trusting in what the word of God has said. When he said that, I'll never leave you, nor will I forsake you. You got to believe that. That's trusting him and just have. I said, well, God, you said it, and I believe it.
All right.
Because you done already told us in your word that heaven and earth would pass away, but your word will stand before one tilt, just a drop.
Yeah.
And I've just been calling on God and reminding him, you said what you said, and that's what and this just trust in him. You said faith, well, I trust you, God.
Yeah.
Because you have a track record, I remember.
Come on now. Anybody else?
I remember. God, how I remember.
Faith is unseen, something that you can't see. You don't know where it's coming from, but you believe if God said he was going to do it, he's going to do it. And we have to have the patience to wait on him to do it.
Okay. All right. Walking by faith. What does it mean to you? Let's hear from Mother back there. Let's hear from Mother. Walking by faith. What does that mean to you, Mother?
It's trusting in the Lord. Whatever you ask him, you got to have faith and believe he's going to do it.
All right. So that means in the meantime, because whatever it is that he said he was going to do, unless he does it right then, because he surely can. He can do it right then. But unless he does it right then, there's a meantime. So what do you do in the meantime? Before he manifests whatever it is that he said, in the meantime, you got to wait, but you got to wait in faith. You got to wait knowing that you have the confidence that whatever it is he said he was going to do, it's going to manifest itself. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but it is going to manifest itself. So walking by faith means whatever the situation, in the meantime, because in the meantime, some more traps might be set. In the meantime, somebody else might come and turn their back on you. In the meantime, you still might be ostracized. But in the meantime, you got to keep stepping on faith. Walking by faith and not by sight. Because if you looked at what's going on in the meantime, you might fall out. You might turn back. You might turn back. You might stand still. But you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving. In the meantime. Oh, there's some rough spots in the meantime. Do you think that after David was anointed that everything came to him on a silver platter? In the meantime, he was hunted down by Saul. Oh, we'll get to it in just a little bit. In the meantime, he had some enemies. In the meantime. Listen, let me tell you something. It's more than just saying I'm walking by faith. It's more than just saying I have the faith. Oh, you got to stand on it. You got to stand on it so you'll be able to tell somebody else. Mother, you said I got a history with it. I got history with it. That's what gives you the faith to keep going. You look back at the history. You look back at what he's brought you through. And you know if he brought you through it, that he can bring you through the next thing in the meantime. In the meantime. Just like Joseph, just like Joshua, just like every saint that came before me. Everybody's had a meantime. Oh, sometimes we get to thinking we're the only ones. We're the only ones. God told us something. Matisha, God gave us a promise, and we asked God for something, and God said, I'm going to do it, and we're looking at him, and we're asking, how long, Lord? But God is looking at you saying, can you hold on? Can you have the faith to stand on what I've told you? What is faith? We've learned that what? It's nothing but taking God at his word. It's not you adding anything to it. It's not you taking away anything from it. But it said, if God said, wait, just hold up. I'm going to do it. But you got to have the faith to keep going in the meantime. In the meantime. And so David, this is a great character, a great story for us to look at, because David went through some things. Oh, the first thing we see now is that his father didn't even think enough of him to call him from out of the sheepfold. Now, something when I can see that if it's you, Brother Robert, because you're not my blood. But when you my blood and you don't see anything in me, that's a whole nother story. Or when you don't have any expectations of me and you my blood, when you looking at everybody else and you can see the good in everybody else, but you can't see the good in me. When you are shutting me out, when the family gets called to a family meeting, y'all know anything about a family meeting? But you're not calling me in. It's just you're making me feel like I'm not even part of the family. You know anything about that? Can't make you feel good. Can't make you feel good.
Let me say this right
It damages your self-esteem.
Let me say this. This ain't the Bible or nothing. This pastor. Y'all stop calling family meetings and not including the wife or the husband. I've seen that through the years where they go off in a corner and they leave the husband and the wife out. You can't leave them out. They won. Ain't no money coming out to the house without, I don't care if it's supposed to be their money. Any decisions need to be made. It need to be made with the husband and the wife. I don't care if they're not blood in that. That's just pastor.
I'm going to take it a step further. Y'all stop having family meetings. Y'all stop having family meetings because you're going to do what you want to do anyway. That's all I got to say about that. You meeting with who you want to meet with.
That's true.
Whatever. So, it's just something to just keep your toe up. Something to keep confusion in the family. But I'm going to tell you, I'm telling you, it is something to mess with your self-esteem, to damage your self-esteem. But God knew who he wanted. God knew who he wanted. And when God has his hand on you, the devil in hell cannot remove you from what God has in store for you. And so Samuel said, I know you got to have some more children because God wouldn't have sent me down here if you hadn't. He sent me down here for a reason. So now, do you have any more children? And Jesse said, well, I do have somebody else. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And I thank God for that. I thank God that there's some things that won't go forth until God manifests himself. There are some things that just will not happen until God manifests himself. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. He is the one that I have chosen, anointed, another word for the chosen one. He is the one that I want you to anoint. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. And so David was anointed. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him. But just as the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul. Amen. The Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul. And so I'm here to tell you this morning that without the power of the Spirit, the servant of God is helpless to do the will of God and to glorify Christ. You can do it, you can try with all your might, but you are doing it in your own strength because the Spirit of the Lord has left you. The Spirit of the Lord came upon David, but even after the Spirit of the Lord came upon David, do you think he went straight to being the king? No. No. And so there were some things he had to go through. God was still preparing him. There is a preparation stage, my sisters and my brothers. There is a preparation stage. We were talking the other, I think that was Wednesday night, about the process. There's a preparation stage that you have to go through. There's a preparation stage that you have to be willing to go through it. You can't buck against it either. So you're anointed, but you go back to the sheepfold. You're anointed, but you go back to your father's house, under your father's rules, doing what your father tells you to do. You're not anointed, and you say, well, now, look, Daddy, I'm not, you may not know it, but I'm the next king of Israel. You got to bow down to me. You can't buck up in pride like that. That's what happened to Saul, and that's what took him off the throne. That's what took him off the throne. And so he was anointed, but he went back to doing what he was doing before he was anointed as king. But God had placed his seal of approval on him. Yes. God had placed his seal of approval on him, and God had him in a space there, even in the sheepfold, getting him ready for what's getting ready to come up in his life, getting him ready to start out slaying giants. Yes. Goliath wasn't the only giant that he was going to have to slay. He was going to have to slay some depression. He was going to have to slay some bitterness. He was going to have to slay some betrayal, some giants that come to take you out. He was going to have to face all of that, even as the anointed king of Israel. So just because you've been given a position and just because you've been placed somewhere by God doesn't mean that something's not going to come to try to cause you to say, this is not what I was meant to do. And so just like God is on his job, I can't emphasize enough that Satan is on his. And his is to come to cause you to, I'm preaching to myself this morning, cause you to turn around. Cause you to doubt yourself, cause you to look at yourself and say, no, this is not me. This can't be. Not the way I'm feeling. Not the way the things, every time I turn around, that songwriter said, every time I turn around, he's blessing me, but it looks like every time I turn around, it's trouble. You ever felt like that? On every hand. And places where you didn't even look for it. Places where you didn't expect it. That's what makes it so bad. Never thought it would be there. Never thought it would be there. Things you thought, that you had gotten over and things you thought you had moved past. The devil knows how to go back and get it. Knows how to go back and get it and knows how to put it right. He just puts it in the right place. Just so you can just get tripped up. I know what I'm talking about. And so you got to look at it and call it what it is, though. You got to say, look, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. And so the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. An evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. This is just part of the consequences, Robert, that he had to pay for being disobedient. It didn't have to be like that, because all you had to do was do what God told you to do. But no, you don't. You're doing what you want to do. And so the Spirit of the Lord left him. This is part of the discipline that he encounters because of the rebellion that he committed. You're just rebellious. So now there are consequences. There are consequences to your rebellion. And Saul's servant said unto him, Behold now, an evil spirit from God troubleth thee. Let our Lord now command thy servants which are before thee to seek out a man who is a cunning player on a harp. And it shall come to pass, when the evil spirit from God is upon thee, that he shall play with his hand, and thou shalt be well. And Saul said unto his servants, Provide me now a man that can play well, and bring him to me. Then answered one of the servants and said, Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, that is cunning and playing, and a mighty valiant man, and a man of war, and prudent in matters, and a comely person, and the Lord is with him. This reminds me of Joseph. It reminds me of Joseph, of when Joseph was in prison, and Joseph thought he was forgotten about, but Joseph could interpret dreams. You remember that story? And when the king had a dream that no one could interpret, he said, Find me somebody, and somebody remembered Joseph. God, all will. You know what? When we think we're not in somebody's thoughts, God always places us in somebody's spirit. He does. They may be way over in California, but somebody's praying for you somewhere. Somebody remembers. Somebody remembers. And I thank God for that. I thank God for that, because it just lets me know that you're really never alone. You know, you're really never alone. Even when you think you are, even when you're going through, you're really never alone. And so they brought up David and brought up his name, and Saul sent unto Jesse and said, Send me David thy son, which is with the sheep. Send me David thy son, which is with the sheep. And so the one who had been anointed king, the one who's back in the sheepfold. The one who's back in the sheepfold, that's the one who's being called. You come to minister to the one who is the present king. And now David, you know, he could have been rebellious himself. But this is a man after God's own heart. Even through all the things that he did, he's a man after God's own heart, because he had a willing spirit. He had a contrite heart. Just, you know, Lord, he was willing to call it what it was. He was willing to face up to what he had done. That's a man after God's own heart. But if you see what you've done and you study saying, Lord, I did, that wasn't me. That's what Saul did. Well, the people made me do it. Well, my wife, if she would just act right. Always blaming somebody else. You know, the Lord can't help you. The Lord can't help you like that. But David was somewhere getting prepared. He was a poet. All the great majority of the Psalms that we read. Oh, definitely. You all agree with that? That's the whole meaning behind the scripture. All things work together. Because you got to look at everything you went through. You know, sometimes we want to live in regret. But you know, the living in regret is not going to help you. You got to look back at it with the spiritual eye, and you have to say, this is one of those all things. You know, you got to take it for what it is. It happened. happened. Yes, it happened. I can't stay there. It happened. I got to take it for what it is. I got to find Sister Dorothy the lesson that I'm supposed to get out of this, and I got to move on, because if I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't be able to tell Whitney about it. If I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't be able to help Tasha with it. If I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't be able to look at it the next time it comes to me for me to do it again and say, I've been down that road before. So it's a purpose in all of it. It's a purpose in all of it. And so I certainly agree with you. Wrong decisions we make, bad decisions we make, mistakes we make. Yes, we did, and yes, we will. But they come to help us. They come to help us. Exactly. Exactly. And so, yes, Brother Davis, God knew exactly. He knew David's purpose even before David came here. If you just read the Psalms, you'll see where David knew that. David knew that. God, you knew all about me. You knew all about me. And so, you know, you made me. And so you know that I'm just frail. You made me out of dust, and you know what I'm capable of. You know, Lord, you know when something happens and I just want to fall out and give up, you know about me. And so since you know about me, just come on and see about me. Just come on and see about me. I tell you what, you just have to give it to him like that. And again, I'm preaching to myself this morning. You just have to give it to him, because ain't nothing you can do about it. And so then David was brought to Saul, and the first time that they met, Saul loved David. Saul loved David. He didn't know David had been anointed to be the next king. And so that love that he had for David, we know the stories that it's gradually going to be replaced by envy. It's going to be replaced by fear. And envy and fear, when you put those two things together, that's a recipe for a disaster. Envy, what is envy? Nothing more than you see something someone else has and you just want it. You just want it. Fear, you have the fear that someone else is going to get just a little more than you got, a little more attention than you get. So you're afraid, not thinking there's just the opposite. If God did it for them, he can do it for you. And most of the time when he does it for you, he does it a different way, so it's better for you. You don't want to be like somebody else. Be yourself. Be yourself, and stop trying to be like somebody else. You're missing out on a lot of blessings, missing out on a lot of opportunities, trying to be like somebody else. And so we come to a point now where David is getting ready to be faced with Goliath. It says here in verse 17, but we know that as he played the harp in verse 23 of chapter 16, and it came to pass when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took a harp and played with his hands. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him. So that was a good relationship right there. But then just a few days later, it's not going to be such a good relationship. Now, the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shokah, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shokah and Azekah in Ephizadim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. In other words, he was much taller than any other men, so they considered him a giant. He was considered to be a giant. And so at this point, David is going back and forth between the camp and between his house, because he was used to go to take them what they needed, food to eat, different things like that. If you look at verse 18, he went back and forth until after the episode with Goliath. Chapter 18, I'm sorry, in verse 2 says, and Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. So up, right now, we're at a point where he's going back and forth, back and forth. You're still in the sheepfold. Then you're coming to bring your brothers and the people who need food. You're coming to bring them food. But there's going to come a time where he's going to stop that. And so Goliath, as we're going to see, we're going to start here. Goliath presented himself to the army of Israel each morning, just worrying them. Just like we have some things in our lives that come up and worry us day after day. You ever been worried like that sometime? You think it's gone, but it's come right back. Some things you thought you had gotten rid of, but it comes right back. It comes right back. And so Goliath presented himself to the army of Israel each morning and every evening for 40 days. And so apparently when we get to this point, David is coming on the last day that he's presented himself. And let's go all the way down to verse 8, chapter 17, verse 8. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them, why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. Now he's talking about the Philistines in their totality. That Israel, if y'all beat us, we'll serve y'all, and if we beat you, you'll have to serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And so Saul, remember now, Saul, this is the same Saul who was hesitant. Do you remember when Jonathan went out to fight? Jonathan saw an opportunity. What was Saul doing then? He was sitting up under a tree. The king was sitting up under a tree. But now, okay, you got Goliath coming out every morning. He's come out every day for 40 days. But you got King Saul, who stood head above over everybody in the Israelite army. So people are looking up to you, not just looking up to you in the natural, but they're looking up to you because you're the king. Now you need to do something. You need to do something. But what is he doing? Let's see. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed. They includes who? Saul the king. Saul the king. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now, David was the son of that Ephraite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And I'm about to stop here. I'm going to read a couple of more. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of the 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest. And the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. And so now David is coming on the last day. And David is coming. He is a boy right now among men, but he's a boy who's been anointed to become the next king of Israel. And so a boy among men who has to look at the king and said, you know what? You might be scared and your men might be scared, but I'm not scared. I'm not scared. And my friends, that's what we'll have to do many times. We just have to tell the devil, Cherie, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I'm not scared, no matter what's going on. Because, y'all, in the meantime, some things come to cause you to fear, to cause you to get scared. And I'll tell you, when you're gripped in fear, I've been there. I've been so gripped in fear that I was scared to go forward and I was scared to go back. Fear will paralyze you. But God has somebody who's not afraid. God has somebody who's not afraid. And at some point, you got to have in your mind that since I belong to God, the spirit of fear, I cannot, perfect love cast out fear. How can I move forward? How can I move forward? So I got to be able to. I've got to be able to move forward to do something for God. Amen. If you're scared, if you're scared of your embarrassment, if you're scared of you never will do anything for God. You never will do anything for God. So we're going to see next Sunday how David took this and turned this whole situation around. Amen. And how it started out with him and Saul as a love affair, but it ended up with Saul hating him and David running for his life. Give the Lord a hand praise. We'll pick up here next Sunday.